This video will show you why join EuroCham Cambodia.
What is EuroCham? EuroCham is the European Chamber of Commerce and the leading foreign business association in Cambodia.
EuroCham's core activities are promoting, supporting, and representing its members
and sustainable business interests in Cambodia.
Since 2011, EuroCham has grown to over 300 members and 6 national chapters.
Joining EuroCham can help you to grow your business in the kingdom.
Who can join? EuroCham is open to everybody. Locals and foreigners, companies, small and large, and individuals are all eligible to become EuroCham members.
We are looking for new startups or small and medium-sized enterprises that are looking to grow.
Why join EuroCham? EuroCham provides unique opportunities and events that help you network with like-minded people and organizations.
Becoming a EuroCham member will help build the visibility of your business both here in Cambodia as well as regionally and internationally.
By joining us, you are giving yourself a bigger, louder voice, a voice that can be heard further away than ever before.
EuroCham membership helps you to grow your network,
have a voice in shaping policies,
take advantage of training,
increase your company's visibility,
build the right team.
EuroCham represents opportunity.
Opportunity to build, to grow, to expand, and develop.
Visit our website today and become a EuroCham member.
Perdon Suy from EuroChams. Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, guest speakers, members, partners, friends, and ladies and gentlemen to EuroCham Cambodia. So thank you for spending your time this morning to join us for a special webinar series titled Looking Forward to a Post-COVID Recovery Business Sentiments and Opportunities. My name is Kaiket Ratana. I'm the Events and Membership Managers at EuroCham Cambodia. So as we all know, to everyone and especially to our business community, 2020 and early 2021 has been very challenging for us. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made a huge impact, a significant impact on the business and the development of Cambodia, impacting almost everything on our GDP growth and many key sectors of the Cambodian economy. So that is why, referring back to our webinar title, today we are joined and honored by His Excellency Vuthy, Deputy Secretary General of the Cambodian Investment Board of the CDCs and Cambodian Special Economic Zones. On behalf of His Excellency Sokchanda Sopir, who is unfortunately not able to join us in today's webinar session due to his busy schedules. And thank you, His Excellency Vuthy, once again for your time to join us today, to share your remarks on the future FDI promotion initiative in Cambodia. And of course, we are also joined today by Mr. Tassilo Brinzer, the current chairman of EuroCham Cambodia, who he will share his view on the tourism and hospitality industries. And we also have our experts and heads of EuroCham sectoral committees to share also insight on key different industries on the challenges and opportunities. We are joined also by Mr. Guillaume Perdon, the CEO of BRED Bank Cambodia, representing the banking sectors. Also, Ms. Christine Bowers from our development partners, Arise Plus Cambodia, and also by my fellow managers at EuroChams. I would like to inform that in today's webinar session, there will be no slots for Q&A session, but all participants are more than welcome to drop your questions or messages in the Q&A box below. And our team and speaker will try to answer your question in written format. And if necessary, we will try to get back and revert to you after this webinar sessions. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome Mr. Denis Saint-Maurice, Executive Director of EuroChams, to give his welcome word. Thank you. Denis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ratanak. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this important webinar. The COVID-19 pandemic since early 2020 has heavily impacted the global economy, but also has interrupted 2 decades of remarkable Cambodian growth. It has generated changes in consumer and business behavior that are likely to sustain. It has also negatively impacted most of the industries, including ones which were key to the Cambodian growth and employment, such as, obviously, the hospitality and tourism industry. This crisis also increased the interest in other sectors, such as agriculture, and has sped up the expansion of the digital economic growth. Of course, this crisis is not yet over, but the aim of today's webinar is indeed, as we call it, to look forward to a post-COVID recovery. A promising vaccination campaign is currently rolled out by the Cambodian authorities, and part of the restrictive measures taken after the 20 February incident are being progressively lifted. This webinar has 3 main purposes: to ensure proper information sharing about economic prospects, challenges, and opportunities, to help shape EuroCham key messages with all relevant stakeholders to boost the economic recovery. This is particularly relevant in order to be actively participating to the ongoing consultation process regarding the Royal Government of Cambodia Economic Recovery Plan for 21-23. And finally, thanks to your feedback and comments, to better adjust the future activities of EuroCham in terms of services, events, engagement, and advocacy. Indeed, today, each of our managers will have the opportunity to make a presentation on services provided to our members in their respective areas. To reach those three goals, we are delighted to hear from our honorable guests. To all of our speakers, I want to express my deep gratitude. I would also take this opportunity to invite those among the audience who haven't done so yet to join EuroCham family as a member. Without further delay, I am pleased to invite my colleagues, Liz and Ratanak, to take the floor for a short introduction on EuroCham's core structures and activities.
Thank you, Denis. Thank you for your welcome word. So, as mentioned, me and my colleague Liz will give a brief introduction about EuroCham and what do we offer. So, Liz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Denis. Thank you, Ratanak. Before we get to the heart of the matter, and my colleagues and our guests touch on the post-COVID-19 business and opportunity outlook, I will allow myself some time to tell you more about the pillars and flagship activities of our organization. For the past 10 years, EuroCham has been the official cornerstone of the European business presence in the Kingdom through the following two key missions and various other activities. Our first and primary mission, on the next slide, and department is Advocacy. Our Advocacy department consists of 10 sectoral committees whose agendas are determined by our members and all respectively aim to develop a more efficient and sustainable business environment with the support of our team. Our committees organize regular internal business consultations and work together on formulating essential policy recommendations through the White Book editions. Being part of a sectoral committee allows companies to come forward during the government-private sector forums and build strong bridges with other business communities and institutions through MOUs. As engaged business experts, committee members share their know-how and also legal and technical information through various events and also virtually through the recently launched Advocacy newsletter and Telegram group dedicated to COVID-19 updates and responses. Our second key mission, on the next slide, is to provide business services. We have a team of experts that can offer customizable solutions to various demands which are fit for all companies, no matter the size or sector. Through our services, corporate members and non-members can also benefit from our popular training program, which supports professionals in developing and improving all types of skills. Next slide, please. As a Chamber of Commerce, we use every possibility to create an advantage for our members. We offer a wide range of technical, social, and instructive events. We use our online presence as network and information hubs. We offer various partnerships for businesses looking for B2B and B2C brand and business visibility. And we annually produce publications that serve as valuable tools for businesses. To this regard, on the next slide, we invite members and also non-members to engage with our chamber through our latest initiatives. The first one is the CSR Contest and Awards, which is open to the entire business community and is the leading competition in the Kingdom, promoting and rewarding companies with a positive impact through their corporate social responsibility activities. And from this year, the competition also rewards young individuals between 16 and 25 years old with a social vision. It is possible to register until Monday for the contest. Secondly, we invite you to also visit the discount page accessible on the EuroCham website to discover deals offered by our members. For the members that are listening, you may upload all your B2B and B2C discounts throughout the year. The use of this page is free and accessible at all times. And soon, we will restart our morning business talks, which we rebooted, and will be an opportunity to hold free roundtable discussions covering COVID-related topics, such as distance managing, work-life balance from home, and taking care of your health during COVID. For the last slide, I just want to remind that EuroCham is not only an organization, but we are a strong alliance and representation of the European cultural diversity. It all started in 2011 by the British, French, and German Chambers of Commerce, who formed the 3 founding chambers. And this alliance was later reinforced by 3 additional national chapters representing and serving the Nordic, Italian, and Benelux business communities. Members have the opportunity to integrate and engage with multiple chambers to maximize their benefits through the unique activities within the different European business communities. So that was it for me. So do not hesitate to contact me if you are interested in one of our programs or activities. Now I leave the floor to my colleague, Ratanek.
Thank you so much, Liz. So yes, indeed, EuroChams are trying to put in place contents and different initiatives during this pandemic in order to support our members through a different platform, of course, and providing key important information, webinars, opportunities for members to engage through our advocacies and providing both supporting and advisory services. So in today, so of course you can always go and visit our website and contact one of our team should you have you need more information about EuroChams. So I would like to take this opportunity again to thank our current and newest members for their supports, and to our annual platinum and gold sponsors for their trust, and of course to BRED Bank for supporting today's webinar sessions. So next, I would like to, for the next session, I would like to invite my colleagues, Mr. Tom Haskett, to share his presentation on the business confidence survey result in the time of this COVID-19. So Tom, the floor is yours, and I will let you share your screen. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Ratanek. So please just let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, I can see some nodding heads. Okay, so yeah, thank you everybody for joining today. I really hope you enjoyed that brief introduction to EuroCham. We tried to keep the sales pitch short, but of course we only grow by having more members, and we're certainly more than just networking events. And so I hope this survey will help you realize this. So a key part of this webinar was to launch 2 of our flagship publications, and the first of these was the Business Confidence Survey 2020-2021, shortened to In the Time of COVID-19. So this year's survey was sponsored by BRED Bank. Guillaume is on the call at the moment, and we'd just like to sincerely thank BRED Bank for their support for this particular survey. I'd also like to thank Vuthy and Neka Trin, who were instrumental in carrying out the survey. During my presentation, I'll cover the methodology, its limitations, summarize the key findings, particularly those related to COVID-19. And to finish, we have a few questions for you to answer as well. And this will help us, and we hope all participants, to understand the situation following the latest outbreak. So for those on the call, you can download the survey using the QR code here and the link. And I believe my colleagues will also be posting the link to download it on the Zoom chat. So first, when and how did we undertake the survey? Well, we collected our results from December 2020 to early February 2021. And of course, we recognize that a lot has changed since then. Our timing was quite unfortunate in some ways. However, our results do provide a useful insight of business sentiment prior to the February 20th incident. We surveyed 111 members in total. 50% of those were SMEs, and 2/3 have been operating in Cambodia for over 5 years. Our respondents represented 8 key sectors, and we believe this forms a good representative sample of the foreign invested companies active in Cambodia. Our survey did, of course, have some limitations. Mainly, of course, the timing, but also the lack of certain sectors in our sample. For example, garment-oriented export-oriented garment manufacturing, and biases due to the wording of certain questions. If we ask companies to select from a list of questions, there was no option to say none, for example. So you're always going to find challenges. This said, I hope the results can provide interesting discussion points for the audience members. And so, for the interesting part, what did our survey reveal? I can only summarize key highlights in my 10 minutes available. So again, please download the full survey for more details. And during my presentation itself, if you're looking to find where to focus your eyes, please focus on the red boxes, as these will be the areas that I'll focus on in my own speech. So, business confidence. By the way, Ratanek, can you see the little videos? The little, okay.
Not really, actually.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So overall, and perhaps unexpectedly, business confidence declined in 2021. And COVID-19 was the primary cause of this. Many of our members are operating in sectors heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly tourism and hospitality. And so our own interpretation, at least at the time of the survey, was that this score was actually better than potentially expected. Of course, no one predicted the February 20th incident, and so we're very interested in assessing current sentiment with poll questions at the end of the presentation. But diving into the details, the main competitive advantages to investing in Cambodia relate to human resources. The low cost of HR was the primary advantage, but there were notable findings being that the availability of human resources appears to have improved slightly, while the retention of workers is an area of increasing concern. And though undoubtedly retention of staff will be an issue that is frustrating for many of our members, these are promising signs that Cambodia's increasingly skilled graduates can find good opportunities once entering the workforce. You can see the full results here. In addition to HR-related advantages, Cambodia's competitive tax regime was the third most highly ranked competitive advantage. Just to leave on the slide for a little bit. Challenges, however, do of course remain. According to our members, non-transparent practices and unofficial fees remain the greatest obstacle to doing business in Cambodia. From the survey comments, though, it's important to note that the laws are generally looked favorably upon by our members and are transparent, but that it's companies run into difficulties during the implementation of certain laws and procedures. Again, more details can be found here. Promising findings included improvements in the scores for taxation and unfair competition. And what this means is that fewer companies experienced difficulties in these two areas in 2021 relative to 2019. Overall, for a visual of what our members typed when filling out the survey, we asked them to fill in extra comments. This word cloud of the most mentioned phrases can actually reveal quite a lot, although it can be interpreted in a number of different ways. But to summarize, it's clear that companies are still concerned with competition, unfair competition in particular, and taxation remains both a challenge and an advantage. Companies wish for greater transparency in general, but as a whole, they are optimistic about their future growth prospects in Cambodia, and they were optimistic about their future growth prospects in Cambodia even during the COVID-19 pandemic. We wanted to highlight the following key changes from our 2021 survey compared to our 2019 survey. And our results suggested that overall, unfair competition has reduced. Fewer companies are facing difficulties with taxation. That's not to say that none are. Many suggested that infrastructure had improved. However, an increasing number wanted to see simplification of some of Cambodia's more complex bureaucratic procedures. So to move on to perhaps the biggest issue of undoubtedly the biggest issue of the last year, how did our respondents manage during the COVID-19 pandemic? And in short, at the time of our survey, which again was February, just before the latest incident, 2020 was already a hugely challenging year. The headline figures are that 90% of respondents were negatively impacted by the pandemic. In particular, the sales of our members were most affected, with the majority also seeing disruptions to their cash flow and their overall operations. Overall, 87% of our members reported a decrease in annual revenue in fiscal year 2020 compared to fiscal year 2019. If we look into the details further, not all companies experienced a challenging year. 6% of members were not affected by the pandemic, at least financially. And 4% of companies, mostly in e-commerce, were even positively impacted by the pandemic. But this does not change the fact that for the huge majority, the picture was very bleak. Particularly hard hit, of course, were tourism and hospitality members, many of which make up the 20% of companies experiencing a greater than 50% loss of revenue. It was clear from our results that our members, like all companies in Cambodia, required support during this time, with corporate income tax relief, the most popular support measure that was requested. At EuroCham, we have certainly seen and we welcome the support initiatives launched by the Royal Government, and these will be covered in more detail by our future speakers. Of note, we didn't do this survey just once. Our January survey was actually much more positive than our April 2020 COVID impact survey. As a few highlights, far fewer companies stated they were significantly negatively affected, and far fewer companies expected a 50% drop in revenue in January 2021 compared to April 2020. And at the time, we certainly interpreted this as suggesting that effective mitigation measures and a less severe lockdown had led to businesses performing slightly better than expected. In addition, people were generally optimistic about the prospects looking forward. 53% expected to grow in 2021. 56% of members were planning on expanding further in a post-COVID-19 Cambodia. Of course, this was a slight decrease in 2019. But of course, as an extremely heavy caveat, our survey was undertaken just as businesses were opening up after the November COVID outbreaks. And so we expect, and we will hear from our committees later, that sentiment may be quite different today. So to close, what did we make of all of this? How did we interpret all this data? Well, our concluding statement was as follows. The shift, interpreting all of our data together, the shift towards a system that encourages compliance will not only improve revenue collection for the Royal Government, but it will also motivate new investors to consider Cambodia as an investment destination. At EuroCham, we see more and more investors looking to enter this market. And in addition, our results suggested that those already here are really willing to invest further, just as long as they're provided with appropriate support and a level playing field relative to other companies. One anonymous quote from a financial services firm summed up this viewpoint quite well. Cambodia has a very dynamic business environment. It would be strengthened even further through clearer and more transparent implementation of business procedures. And this is the quote that we selected for the final publication. But of course, wait, our results were collected in January 2021. We asked ourselves the same question: are they even relevant anymore? Do they reflect the picture today? And we have a few questions to help us understand this. So please, I would invite all of you to fill in the poll questions quickly that my colleague Denis will post. These responses are strictly anonymous, but you will be able to see the results straight away. So I'm hoping for those on the call, even if our business confidence survey may have been slightly outdated due to February 20th incident, we can get some real-time information now. So hopefully you can all see the poll questions. And Ratanak, let me know when we have a good number of responses to show the results.
Sure. Thank you, Tom. So to all of attendees, please, you will see a screen pop up for the poll. The question is anonymous, so please feel free to share your data, and then we're now at around 20. Yeah. We leave around 1 minute for everyone to fill it.
We also recognize not everybody on the call is a company, so we have options, for example, not relevant for what was the impact of COVID-19 on your revenue. So Ratanek, let me know maybe when we have around, we can wait until perhaps 9:02.
Yeah, so we are now at 50%.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay, so we'll wait until 9:02 and then we'll close.
Yeah.
Ratanek, even at 9:02, will participants still be able to respond even if we've shown the results?
We'll try to leave it on, but it will not be shown on the screens.
Okay, so we can 9:02, we can close. Okay. So we'll very quickly share the results for those on. Ratanek will find a way to have this poll open at the same time. So for those who didn't already answer, you have the chance to.
Okay, so everyone can see the result now on the screen. So for question 1.
Okay, so yes, we see. I mean, it's some interesting differences compared to the original survey. We have around 33% significantly negatively affected. Overall, it's interesting that the number of companies not affected or even positively affected has gone up, at least within this sample. The number of companies experiencing a more than 50% loss of income has sadly increased. But again, those experiencing a positive gain in total revenue have increased, which is interesting. It seems like the extremes have been expanded on both sides. In terms of company growth expectations, it still seems that the slight majority, or no, exactly the 50% of companies, so the private sector companies applying, those not relevant, we have around 50% in total that expect growth in the next few months. And a very promising finding to end this on. Only, what is it, 36% of respondents have had to dismiss one of their some of their workforce. So overall, I think that my interpretation of this is it's been obviously the February 20th incident has made it worse for some, but potentially better for some who were already managing the COVID crisis quite well. So on that that quite ambiguous note, I hope that these survey results can at least give an updated version of our business confidence survey or something to take home today. Thank you very much for participating in this. I know we sprung this questionnaire on you quite quickly, but it really does help us make these latest results up to date. So with that, I just want to say again, a huge thank you to everyone who took part in the original survey and for those on the call today. I'll now pass on the floor back to Ratanek, who will introduce our next speakers, and they will really give the on-the-ground feelings of what they've experienced in their sectors. So from me, thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Tom. So thank you for the summaries of the survey result. I would like to remind that you can access the survey itself in the chat box, and it's also been available on EuroCham website at the moment. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Guillaume, the CEO of BRED Bank Cambodia, to share his presentation on the challenges and opportunities from the financial and banking industries. Thank you, Guillaume.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I just tried to share the screen. I don't know if we can see it full or not yet. Probably now.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good morning, everybody. So my name is Guillaume. I'm working in Cambodia since 2016. I was in Laos before and in Western Africa before going to Southeast Asia. I used to be on the board of EuroCham Cambodia. So to start, before going through the challenges and opportunities on the financial sectors, I just wanted to share with you 2 or 3 key elements of the sector regarding 2020, because we don't have updated statistics as for now, of course. So the first slide that you can see on your screen is about the evolution of the sector in 2020. So for the first time for a long time, the financial sector growth was slowing down, is slowing down in 2020. Plus 15% growth in 2020 for banks, both loan and loan portfolio and deposit, compared to 22% average from yearly average from 2015 to 2019. There is also a strong decrease in growth on the MFI sector, with a plus 13% growth in 2020 compared to an average annual growth of 30% from 2017 to 2019. I want to share with you as well a bit more of the impact of the beginning of the COVID, because all these figures were before the local outbreak that we are facing since the 20 February in Cambodia. But still, we see the impact on the loan portfolio quality already at the end of 2020. So the NPL ratio for the banks is 2.7% at the end of the year 2020 versus 1.5% in 2019. So it's already a strong increase. And on the MFI side, we are at NPL ratio at 1.8%. This is my figures. I'm not sure these one are the official for MFI, versus 1% in 2019. Also a very strong increase in 2020. And as you probably know, most of the banks proposed to their supported their client on a way that they proposed COVID-19 relief package moratorium on lending repayment. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of postponing the repayment of the loans of the clients, both business or individuals that are facing strong difficulties during the COVID period, at least for now in these figures in 2020. To give you an idea, 10% of the portfolio of the banks for the full market were on COVID package, I would say COVID relief at the end of the year 2020. And according to the estimation I had, it's about 20% on the MFI lending portfolio. So this means that this 10% of portfolio for the banks and 20% of MFI are kind of frozen, and we are waiting for, I would say, a better time for the company or the individuals that are facing issues. As per our experience at BRED Bank Cambodia, we of course support our clients this way. And we are still renewing this COVID package, relief package since March 2020, 6 months by 6 months. This figure of 10% is the end of 2020, but to give you an idea, in the first lot of COVID relief, we reach probably about 30% of the lending portfolio from March to September 2020, and then we were thanks to I will say the rebound of the economy at the end of the end of 2020, and the fact that there were no real local outbreak in 2020 in Cambodia. Of course, client after 6 months or 3 months, they were okay, or they were even happy to start again the repayment as per normal. So just before going through the challenge and opportunities, I want to mention also that the pandemic impact at the end of the day on Cambodian banks, especially in 2020, was, I will say, it's my personal opinion, but was quite less severe than we could have imagined at the initial stage. So I'm not saying that, I mean, anyway, I know that several sectors, and we were mentioning tourism, hospitality, kind of garment as well, and now construction were facing a very strong, are still facing very strong difficulties. It's not to compare the sector, it's more to say we could have seen it couldn't be worse, because we could have seen some liquidity shortage on the financial sector. We could have seen some panic, or we could have seen some bank run. But at the end of the day, and up to now, even if there are now local outbreak, since the beginning of the COVID, we can say that the sector, the financial sector, is resilient and strong, because there were no liquidity shortage, no failure of any institution, and I must say that there were a strong government support to our sector. And especially, of course, from the NBC, on two main measures that were taken by the National Bank of Cambodia. The first one was to enable the bank to be able to extend to set up moratorium for our clients, of course, and this is still renewed. This authorization was renewed 6 months by 6 months by the NBC, and for your information, this authorization was extended to December 21 now. So until December 21, all the banks are able to with flexibility to support their client on the lending side, and without having a strong impact on their provisioning. And the second one is the ease of the NBC on the specific ratio, which enables the bank since April 2020 to be more comfortable on liquidity, and to ensure that there will be no shortage in the sector. For me, it was two key measures that were very important to support the financial and especially the banking sector. If I go to the next slide, so talking a bit about the challenges on the financial sector. Like everybody, I would say, like every company, we had to face with security first, so health protection of our staff, protection of our clients. As I just mentioned, and I'm not going too much into detail about it, because I think we are facing the same kind of issue. We all were facing a strong issue during the lockdown. The bank were able to reopen, but just after the Khmer New Year during the lockdown, but we were able only to have 2% of our staff on site, which was very difficult, and especially on some smaller banks. The second challenge that we had to face, I will say, is what I just mentioned, and we had to set up a large range of tools to be able to set up this moratorium since March 2020 to support our clients which were facing a strong challenge in their sectors. And what we are challenging as a bank, also as a financial institution, is the uncertainty of the pandemic, like everybody, I would say. But on our side, I mean, every company needs to be more flexible to adapt quickly. This is true for every company and for the bank as well. But on our side, we have this risk management issue that we need to deal with, meaning that all this is built on history, probability, forecast, and everything. And when we are in uncertainty, of course, our tools are very poor, and we are a little bit in trouble to take I will say the good decisions. And the two key challenge for us, again, even if I just mentioned it already, is for us the NPLs, rising cost of risk and future loss. These are probably one of our key challenge, and the growth of our business, which is impacted. As you see in 2020, the impact was still limited, but I assume that 21 will be a bit worse. We don't have any idea yet, but of course, due to some local outbreak now, we know that all of our activities are very challenged in those days. Let's go to the opportunity for the financial and banking sector. So I think that as in most of, in many sectors, especially distribution, but on our side, clearly one of the key opportunity for us is to accelerate the shift to our digital channels. First, we are I mean, as a CEO, as a executive in these companies, in banks or in other company, we understand that definitely now we need to push more on the digital channels that we did before. On the other hand, our clients are pushing on their side, of course, to are more open, I would say, to go for digital. We will think it will enable us also to reconfigure our branch physical network, and it's clearly one of the consequences of the COVID new way of living. We need to keep our branch physical network, of course, but outside of the purely digital channel, we need to find and to set up solutions for being able to be in touch with our customer on a remote way. Because we will face growth decrease and more cost of risk. I think that all banks will need to work on their productivity gains. So, for example, through automation and trying to digitalize more their internal process, and review some allocation of their spending and investment, probably again very more focused on digital. So this is not for BRED, this is for all the bank. I think every banks now are pushing on this, and they are reviewing their they should or they could review their strategy or their business model following the COVID crisis. The last picture I would like to share with you is what we did internally. So this is purely what we did at BRED in Cambodia, internal work, I would say. But I wanted to share this with all our members because I think that every business is in the same situation. So what we did is, since last year already, and we are still working on it, is to try to see how we will adjust our strategy, how we already adjust during the COVID, but how we adjust to the next normal after COVID, probably in 6 months, 1 year, when everything is coming back to a new normal, I would say. So we are looking at analyzing what has changed during the COVID-19 on our side. What did we not do, but we could have done on reflection, and what of these changes we need to keep for the next normal. And on the other side, we are analyzing the trends of the market globally, in our sector, but also in Cambodia. We are trying to adjust also these big trends that we are now feeling from outside, to match or not match with the local trends, and to adjust and rethink our strategy. As a conclusion, I hope I'm not too late, sorry. To answer to the title of this webinar, business sentiment and opportunity as a representative of BRED in Cambodia, I can just tell you that we are definitely optimistic about the evolution of the country, of the economy. Of course, we are in some difficult day right now, but I'm talking about medium term and longer term. We are today, when we are rethinking our strategy, adding more investment in the country, and again, we are very optimistic on the medium term. Thank you very much. I hope I was not so long.
It is fine. Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you for your presentations. Thank you so much. So next, without further delay, I would like to invite my colleagues, Noé, to give his view on from the advocacy dimensions. Thank you. Noé, you have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratalak. Everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Indeed, I will try to give a short presentation from me by way of introduction of our next speakers from our sectorial committees. And as you may know, and as my colleague Lise already shortly explained, our sectorial committees are working groups which are open to all EuroCham members and which are crucial to our advocacy work. Our advocacy work, which is very much a partnership with the real government to really close the gap between the public and the private sector, but also a partnership with international organizations and development partners. Now, the real government has allocated $800 million for the country's economic recovery with a pledge by the Prime Minister that if the pandemic would last the entire year, that the government could spend up to $2 billion. Putting that into perspective, in 2019, the Cambodian national budget was about $6.8 billion. And in 2020, 8.2. So that means that about 20 to 25% of what was previously spent by the government in total would be available this year to aid the economic recovery. Now, what does this spending mean? Well, it means that there will probably be an overall deficit equal to 3.1% of Cambodia's GDP. The government's revenue is budgeted at 21.4% of GDP and its expenditure at 24.5%. So that brings us to the 3.1% difference. Now, despite this deficit, it is widely agreed that Cambodia will remain at a low risk as a country of debt distress. Its total public external debt is estimated to rise to the equivalent of 34.6% GDP, 35.9% in 22. And historically, in the past years, that figure has always been between 28 and 31%. So while there is a large and rising pressure, you could say, on the public budget, the indicators do not show that Cambodia's debt position would be traumatic at this stage or in the near future with the current budget plans. Now, my next slide here, when we talk about economic recovery, of course, we have to know where we stand. And these are the Asian Development Bank's latest figures from April. So these figures, they are pre-lockdown, and the real impact of the lockdown on these figures is still quite heavily debated. But of course, the least you can say is that while the impact may be overall limited, globally speaking, it is of course unlikely that there will be a positive impact on the figures that I'm now showing because of the lockdown. So for now, these figures show that after last year's drop of our GDP with 3.1%, for this year, we may expect a growth of 4% and in 22, 5.5%. The inflation is also slightly increasing, but still you can see it's stabilizing at around 3% since last year. This inflation has been largely pushed by an increase in the food price. And of course, because of the high level of dollarization of the economy in Cambodia, it's not easy for the government to run its own independent monetary policy. So there is a global US dollar influence, which is reflected more in Cambodia than in other countries. If you compare these figures to what ADB calls developing Asia, you can see that we are running behind in 21, but we are catching up again in 22. And overall, we're also not doing so well on the inflation side. But be aware that ADB's definition of developing Asia, it covers a wide range of countries, even including China, Korea, up until Afghanistan, to give an example. So let us maybe have a look at our closer peers. And as you can see here in Southeast Asia, there is a divergent recovery across the region. And Cambodia is, for 21, a little bit below the middle of the class. But then again, in 22, we have a bronze medal in GDP growth, and we are expected to exceed Southeast Asia's average in 22. And that difference between 21 and 22 on the other side is mainly explained by the fact that goods and services exports are expected to rise by almost 13% in 22. And of course, we are much dependent on the economic recovery in our major trading partners, and also the continued foreign direct investment in Cambodia, about which His Excellency Chea will talk later this morning. And of course, as of 22, it is expected that the tourism industry will pick up some pace again, which in 2019 contributed about 20 to 30% of Cambodia's economy, depending on your definition and what you exactly include under tourism. Now, before I look at the more global picture in Cambodia of economic recovery and advocacy, I would like to spend a moment on the micro level of economic recovery. And with micro level, I refer to the most individual level, being what companies themselves, and with a particular focus on MSMEs, what they could consider to build back better by themselves. And this is also what Guillaume shortly addressed in his last slide, as concerns BRED. Now, I obviously also don't want to lecture on what companies should or should not be doing, or downplay the hardships they are experiencing. But it is important to highlight that when we are observing economic recovery, there is often an untapped potential within the economic actors themselves, potential which is, in other words, not fully optimized. And responding to the COVID-19 crisis on the micro level really means making sure that all companies themselves did and are able to do themselves what they could to overcome the crisis. And most will obviously spontaneously try to do so because it's in their best interest to survive, to adopt new strategies. But only a minority of the huge amount of MSMEs in Cambodia truly have the capacity and the support to actually develop an economic recovery plan for themselves and to conceptualize the necessary turnarounds in their business to survive in changed circumstances. So capital needs for companies are not often the first question. It follows on the identification of weaknesses that require a solution, or on the other hand, the identification of opportunities which can be taken. Now, our friends at UNIDO, they actually have done a tremendous job by developing a guide for SMEs on how they can respond to the COVID-19 crisis. And together with the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology and Innovation, MISTI, the guide has also been published and disseminated in Khmer. And it is exactly what we need to make companies aware about business recovery processes, about business continuity planning, how to make a SWOT analysis, how to forecast cash flows, how to adapt your supply chains, and so on. So really to try to help businesses in maximizing their own resilience and recovery. Now, what is the advocacy dimension of this? It's this kind of internal exercise for companies is something where governments could step in as well. Each company which can save itself is a company which does not need to be saved. And for us means budget that can be allocated to companies and industries that do need support. And this process of internal recoveries is also crucial if you want companies to consider to become digital, to become green, in general, to become more efficient and more adapted, to be integrated in the value chains. In other words, to become and remain valuable suppliers and customers for our members. And as a chamber, we are not only taking our advocacy responsibility in this regard, but we also try to assist companies actively by offering trainings, for example, in digital marketing, in financial analysis, and so on. Where support measures are obviously needed, increasing that business resilience and flexibility will also positively continue to impact the future and, of course, be useful in other types of crises or even just in other future outbreaks. Now, I dropped here some references in my slide, also of ISO norms, which are useful to have a look at to review your own business continuity and COVID survival strategy. Now, let me quickly turn to what you could actually call the second layer of economic recovery, and what we typically talk about when we are discussing economic recovery measures. It is what the government can and needs to do to support that micro level that I just discussed. As I'm running out of time, unfortunately, I will have to leave it to our sectorial expert to speak more in detail about their specific sectors, but I will just mention that as COVID-19 is obviously a broad crisis, we also try to offer a broad advocacy response. And of course, that is simply needed if we want all pieces to fall together eventually to get the motor optimally running again. So we cannot simply look at the hard economy, so to speak, but we also have to consider, for example, education and learning loss and how that may eventually affect the ability for the private sector to hire skilled workforce, which was an issue even before COVID. So we have a multi-layered approach in our advocacy where, on the one hand, we allocate our resources to trying to find solutions together with the government to the most pressing needs on the ground. For example, we were quite involved in the extension of the several rounds of mitigation measures, but also early on in the lockdown to try to improve the situation of the logistics and the e-commerce sector, for example. Then, on the other hand, we try to avoid a selective approach and rather try to partner up with the government to work on that middle and long-term perspective. So we also try to make sure that what we are advocating for as EuroCham, that we are already steering the ship in the most fruitful direction for the future. And that is why, for example, we focused on e-commerce in the lockdown, and that we support the measures for the tourism and hospitality and the garment industry and so on, because those sectors exactly will be important gears in the future. And the same goes for our focus on green business. This is not a political belief of me or of EuroCham, but it's simply a necessity for companies and for Cambodia's future as a sourcing destination, in particular in view of the EU's Green Deal goals, which are becoming more and more important. Now, to some issues, we also try to give an alternative response. Taking the example of education again, for example, we try to reunite the interests of the public and the private sector, not only by dialogue with the royal government, but also by setting up projects ourselves, such as career talks at universities, for example. To give you another idea, we know that a quick rollout of the vaccination is crucial to our businesses to open up again, and it's also one of the key considerations in the ADB's figures, which I shared at the beginning. So there we try to full-on provide practical support to achieve that rollout as quickly as possible. And that is also an indirect way of advocating for business interests. With this, unfortunately, I will have to wrap up looking at the time, but I gladly pass the floor now to our 6 speakers from our, in total, 14 committees and working groups that we have at EuroCham, and they will give you some more insight in their industry. So thank you very much, and I now invite Matthew Tippetts, the head of our ICT committee and the CEO of Clik, to take the floor as soon as my colleague Ratanak shares the slides. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noe. So yes, moving on to our next sessions, I would like to invite Mr. Matthew Tippetts, the chairman of EuroCham ICT committee and also the co-founder and CEO of Clik Payment, for his view from the ICT industries. So Matthew, the floor is yours and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to speak to you this morning and bring you a little bit the main views and trends we see from the ICT sector. So we've tried to break it down a little bit like we were asked by the EuroCham team. So we'll start with what are the key challenges that have been impacting during this period. Number one was last mile delivery challenges in e-commerce and food delivery. And we're not just talking about the issues of going through checkpoints, but it's also simple issues around address unregistered or undefined, and the need for having systems refer effectively to a GPS position, because otherwise it's very difficult to do a delivery. Lockdowns and cash on delivery have created logistical and health risks, as well as excessive cash handling costs. Now, the cash handling cost has always been an issue. We're a cash-driven economy. Obviously, with the digitalization, this tends to reduce, but when e-commerce becomes the leading way to get retail commerce done, which is what happened when we had the lockdowns, cash handling became a big issue. Third point is around the low digitalization rate of SMEs, schools and government and healthcare institutions, which created a challenge when it came to the transition rate to remote learning and working due to COVID-19. The learning curve was incredibly steep, and that created massive challenges for all these institutions and groups when it came to digitalization in a forced march, because your business brick and mortar cannot function and you need to transition very fast. That created strains. Finally, COVID-19 forced a fast transition towards digitalization, which was partly hindered by legacy systems and habits. This is again one thing where in certain sectors in the ICT, you could see that there were certain issues. In others, it was a welcome move. So it varies, but again, this is one of the challenges when you've got an enterprise in the ICT sector or any sector which uses a lot of legacy systems to adapt to digitalizations, to digital payments, just accelerates the whole adoption of digital solutions and did it in a very, very fast way. So that's basically for the challenges. Moving forward. Perfect. So what are the opportunities in the ICT sector and why Cambodia is attractive? So when we look at opportunities, we split it in three groups. We've got the B2C, so it's digital media, OTT streaming, content players are benefiting. Definitely, you're staying home, you're watching streaming stuff, you're on your phone, consuming data. On the B2B side of things, virtual private networks, cybersecurity, and data security saw a massive surge as workforces are operating remotely, and which meant that for a lot of teams like banks, like microfinance institutions, and so on, which found themselves with significant portions of their workforce having to work from home and still manage security properly. That means that you had to be equipped with a virtual private network and so on, and that created an opportunity in the market for us. On the e-commerce side of things, mobile payments, straightforward. It made it pretty clear that cashless payments, contactless payments are critical for the future, especially as cash in of itself is not just heavy to process, but it's a vector of transmission. Nobody wants to touch anything when they're buying something. Finally, why Cambodia? Now, this is very much, what we've all heard of for a long time, and it's still valid today. The opportunity of Cambodia is huge. We've got a young, tech-savvy population, eager to innovate, eager to adopt innovation because we have a high smartphone penetration and very cheap data. So that opportunity is still absolutely there. Small but homogeneous population, which offers great breeding ground for business models preparing to scale regionally. So Cambodia, we've always seen it as a great stepping stone for new technologies across the region. It's a great pilot market for the reasons I just mentioned. So that opportunity is definitely still there. Moving forward. So what are the key sector trends? So the obvious one, cloud. This has been boosted by higher usage of content, gaming downloads, video conferences, and the impact of remote access to corporate networks. The cloud has become a major part of all our lives, and you may not know it, but on platforms like we're using, like Zoom, this is entirely from the cloud. Anything to do with streaming is generally from the cloud, and if you shut down the cloud, perhaps you'd lose 75% of apps in your app store. So the cloud is huge, is growing, and is going to be the dominant piece of infrastructure for any company when it comes to their IT infrastructure. EdTech solution growth. This will definitely continue, especially around coding, UI, UX, data analysis will increase due to the shift of required skill sets. I think EdTech is going to be one of the sectors which, when we move towards a new normal, will take a massive place in trainings, education. Third point is the need for reskilling. Now, this is a regional issue. I said an example about India having to reskill 45 million jobs before they become obsolete by 2025. Cambodia is obviously at a much lower scale, but it is facing the same need for reskilling. And the advantage is it's got a younger population, easier to reskill. But with COVID, this has accelerated this. And emerging deep tech, replacing manual labors and the automation and things, for example, which were mentioned by Guillaume Perdon, where automation is becoming critical in their IT systems and banking, needs that you get a workforce capable of putting in place these systems and maintaining them, and hence a need for reskilling. Finally, again, on the banking sector, I think it's pretty clear that this year is a year of accelerated banking. Originally, I put a word in which I hesitated whether it was a properly English word, bancarization, which is basically the dramatic increase in adoption of bank accounts. I think this we've all seen has been driven by the instant bank accounts from different banks, where all you need to do is download an app to open a bank account. And for the growth in fintech and regtech. Regtech is regulatory technology, which is around electronic KYC, but also transaction monitoring for enabling anti-money laundering and CFT procedures in financial institutions. I think this year you're going to see a massive increase in adoption of bank accounts and digital payment technologies. We're already seeing it right now. The COVID has clearly accelerated that trend. So it's here to stay. I think I'm done, unless I have another slide, but I think I've...
Yeah, that's the last one. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for your time. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Suy Bunthan, Chairman of EuroCham Transport and Logistics Committee, and he's also the head of operation at DHL. He will share his view from the transport and logistics industries. Bang Bunthan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ratana, and good morning, Your Excellencies and Mr. Chairman of EuroCham. I'm glad to share the view from our committee part on the transport and logistics. Go straight to the challenge. I think most importantly is the safety of our people. That is the really challenge, because in the logistics we need our guy on the road most of the time, and the sourcing of the PPE is also another concern, and also impact into our P&L as well. On top of that, we have seen the rapid change of the safety measurement introduced by the government or by our own company. So it's a challenge of communication to the team on the ground to make sure that they understand the change, what is happening with the regulation or the safety protocol, to make sure that they are safe on the road or come to work. Second is the closure of the not only the city and the border or between the countries. The recent one is the lockdown in the city and other province. We know the objective of the government to protect the people of Cambodia. But it also imposed a certain challenge to our sector as well. We could see that the inconsistency in terms of enforcement by local authorities to recognize our service as one of the essential service for the countries. Some area they allow us to go, some they say no, you need this, you need that. Even though we have to go all the way to lockdown committee, I think we really appreciate the support from a lockdown committee chaired by His Excellency Onpon Mirirot for understanding the challenge we face. However, we still, when we got the permit to travel on the road, the implementation at the local level is always a challenge. We understand the part as well, because communication from the top to the ground is always not as easy as one. On the third point, as we know, the most of the players in transport and logistics, especially smaller one that do not have really the bigger network, they rely mostly on the passenger flight, which to transport their good cross the border or to other countries. So we have seen the reduce of the space or the flight in and out of Cambodia. On the sea transportation part, we also noticed the some drop in terms of capacity as well. Usually, this sea transportation would account more than 80% of the goods, but because of the demand and the supply imbalance, we have seen the challenge in this capacity as well. On the productivity part, we know that during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have to schedule our people to work from home. We also incurred some issue with the labor shortage, and also some smaller players, they have no choice but to reduce the job or cut the payment as well. Like Matthew mentioned, is the challenge with the online payment for the transport and logistic part. I think we deal mostly with custom and tax. We see good progress in terms of the online platform in tax, but we need some more user friendly in terms of e-payment with government agency platform like custom system. Like the last one that already mentioned by previous speaker on the business continuity plan or backup plan for the company, I think generally our members mostly we find that they really need to have a good business continuity plan in place for such a pandemic. This give you a good preparation on whether you decide to operate from somewhere else in case of your facility have to go for closure, like 14 days quarantine some of the staff, and what is the mode of operation from one facility into another facilities. Next please, Ratana. On the opportunity part, I think this COVID-19 really give us the a good experience and also help us to change some of the perception of the consumer and the business practice as well, that I think it was difficult to introduce before the COVID, but I think COVID helped us in a way that we have to change our way of doing business, dealing with the consumer to dealing with the customer as well. Like the supermarket, they have to go to the online platform where customer can buy direct from the apps. Like Matt mentioned that the app, the smartphone is mostly available for most Cambodian, and if we can get those market, onto the platform, that will change the way of doing business as well. The second point on this opportunity is the transformation of the first and last mile. In this case, I would add the word contactless deliveries, which means we will have no interaction with the delivery guys and the receiver or the consignee part. For instance, we can look into the parcel locker. It's like the ATM for your shipment. When you have a deliveries, the transporter will log into, will put your shipment into the parcel locker, then the PIN code will send to your mobile phone. You can go and collect it from the locker anytime you want. All you need is to key in the passcode into the parcel locker, and then the door will open automatically for you to take your shipment or the parcel. Again, the e-commerce platform is a good opportunity, but you have to partner with a good logistics service as well. So those marketplace that has a good partnership with logistics service, they tend to have a good growth in their online transaction as well. And I think this COVID lockdown could tell us the opportunity for more logistics company to come in, but with proper and registered company in the country. And the last but not least, the alternate solution. I think the previous speaker in banking also mentioned about the automations and all that. Deliveries service or processing of the goods inside a warehouse. We also have to look at some form of automation as well. And yeah, maybe the future, the drone delivery would be one of the option, if the government allow by the regulation as well. Because the lockdown, you can't travel on roads, access to some certain goods and essential supplies would be a challenge. But imagine if you have a drone delivery service in Cambodia, would be an ideal. It's a long dream, but I hope that this can happen in Cambodia. Next, please. On the trends part here, I think the lockdown pushed us more to go into digital channel, like Matt mentioned. I think the telecom industry also doing well. The banking with the technology advantage, the fintechs, the mobile apps, they can engage or attract more consumer to use their apps to perform payment online, with either Food Panda, Nyam 24. So this bank, I could notice, I don't want to name it, but we know that they are doing quite well as well. And we see, some unregistered online business, they go on social media platform as well. So that is a good potential for a proper platform for Cambodia as well. E-commerce platform, yeah. Ratana, please, the last one.
I think this is the last slide, Bong.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Bong. Thank you for the presentation. So to our following speakers, since we're running slightly late behind schedule, kindly remind to have your presentation in around 5 minutes. So next, I would like to have Dr. Chea. He is the current chairman of EuroCham Healthcare Representative Working Groups, and also the CEO and founder of Community Pharma. Dr. Vireak, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ratana. Good morning, Your Excellency Vuthy. Good morning, Chairman of EuroCham and colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. My name again is Vireak. I'm the chairman of EuroCham Healthcare Committees. We are currently working on a few pharma marketplace, healthcare marketplace as well for our company. We have our retail stores inside Macro. And next, please. So the current challenges and impacts from COVID-19 for our healthcare sectors are as follow. COVID-19 has created restriction of movement at times when our people really needed to have their health checked and also access to medicine. So this creates very difficulties for people in general when they get sick, right? They need their medicine, they need their health checkup. So how do you do that? I believe there should be, there's a need for development of digital solution to allow remote consultation diagnostic, and delivery of medicine. Next, please. Next slide. Okay, thank you. So in terms of opportunities, there are still few pharma manufacturing, despite our governments provide investment incentives to the investors. There are still shortages of medicine, especially specialty medicine in Cambodia. And this is something that we could look at, in terms of exploring the emergency use authorizations, which be done for COVID vaccine, rapid tests, to provide better access to medicine for our people here. On the good news, there are more healthcare reimbursement through insurance now. So that means less payment out of pocket, which attracts a big pharma company to also enter the country. Next slide, please. So in terms of highlighted trends, as everyone has already mentioned, digitalization in healthcare industry will definitely boom in Cambodia. I foresee that pharmacy owners will adopt technology to aid their daily operation, whether it's point of sales, inventory management, expiration date alert, and just to keep track of their sales in general. In addition, I believe that pharma companies, the bigger ones has already started, will equip their sales force with technology to better engage with the pharmacy buyer. Whether ordering through an online platform from the pharmacy owners to the pharmacy suppliers, those are just some of the things that pharma companies are currently doing. Last but not least, I believe that there will be more telemedicine platform booming in Cambodia as well to provide better access to healthcare through the smartphone. This is quite important, especially during COVID-19. It's something that we really need to learn from, is that during the lockdown, people still get sick, right? So if they cannot travel, then there should be a better alternative solution to that. So all these regulations needs to be regulated. And definitely I would be happy to work with the government on these new regulations as well. Next, please. So what investor needs to know? Healthcare industry in our countries locally is growing, especially when people cannot travel abroad for medical tourism. Our healthcare market here is very dynamic. There's an even playing field for compliance companies. And now more than ever, it's so easy for new companies to register their company online. And don't forget that most of our human resources can speak English, just like me. Due to time, I'll keep it short. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Vireak. Thank you for your presentation. So next on the agenda, we have Dr. Susanne Bodach. She's recently has been elected as the chairwoman of EuroCham Green Business Committee, and she's also the managing director of Incorporations in Cambodia. Susanne, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Kedra. Thanks for inviting me as a representative of the Green Business Committee here. Next slide, please. Of course, our committee members and the Green Business Committee in general, the green business industry in general in the country has been impacted of COVID. And particularly as we are mostly service providers in the engineering field, but also product providers. Ongoing projects are delayed because contracts are postponed. And so sales in green business and green services and products have temporarily decreased. Some of our members also face a problem to import material and technologies, in particularly in the solar sector. Some issues were last year due to the sudden border closures in Vietnam and Thailand, which has been then resolved slowly. And we have mainly members from the tourism sector that, of course, are very much impacted since over 1 year. And some of our members are also very much linked to the real estate sector. And they noticed, obviously, this negative impact only later, especially due to the current, to the previous closure and the lockdown, but also to the decrease in sales of real estate property. We all hope, and green recovery has been discussed globally and also locally, that this green recovery will create new business opportunities in our sector. And to discuss also a bit on that, we need a bit to understand where does it go, where do we go, where's the future of our economic progress. Next slide, please. When it comes to the giving an outlook for the sector, I would like to refer to this transformation map outlined by the World Economic Forum. Here you can see it on the left side. You can see on this map that environmental sustainability will play a more and more and crucial role in transforming our economies from a kind of traditional fossil fuel-based economy towards a low carbon and more renewable economy. And of course, global and local actors are also more and more convinced that environmental sustainability will become a must-do. And Cambodia must follow because it wants to be competitive in the market. And next slide, please. And actually, what is the situation in Cambodia in the green business sector? We are still a very small sector, yeah, because obviously often going green looks like something additional that I can only afford once I have some basic economic growth, right? So there is a lack of green infrastructure compared to the neighboring countries in the region, but also globally. We're talking about renewable energy, particularly solar, energy efficiency, smart energy solutions, waste and water management. But we are also part of a global supply chain, and we know that corporates and investors are looking now to make those supply chains greener and more sustainable and less carbon intensive. Yeah. So this low emission economic growth gives also an opportunity to Cambodia to leapfrog as much as possible. Yeah. We see this in certain sectors, for example, when it comes to electrical vehicles. But let's see where are we starting from? What is the starting point? Next slide. Here in Cambodia, key issues of competitiveness of Cambodia is, of course, the future orientation of the government. The economy needs to be innovative enough, capable to innovate, to create new solutions. We need a different kind of workforce skills, and we need more dynamic business community. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, I think you cannot hear me. Hello?
No, okay. Yes, I can
now?
hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And there are three major sector trends that I see. First of all, as I mentioned before, we are moving away from an economic model which is solely profit-driven. Yeah, environmental, social, and governance compliance will more and more play an increasing role. Also, due to the pressure from the new legal frameworks in Europe and other countries. Yeah, you can see on this slide the sustainable development goals are those goals that will also guide our new economic model. International corporations, investment funds, banks, they set their own sustainability goals. They join initiatives like the RE100, yeah, that was discussed earlier this year in our breakfast talk. And they want to make their whole supply chain green, low carbon, zero carbon, and improve also their contribution to social development and community development. This will, of course, ultimately also impact producers' countries like Cambodia and also have impact on investment decision. So, of course, in regard to this, I think also government need to look into developing, giving guidance to the business sector. And this, by saying this, please switch the slide, next slide. I would like to outline a few of the government's initiatives that indicates this kind of improvement of the legal and regulatory framework for green recovery. First of all, the new investment law, which also considers to incentivize green investments. Ministry of Mines and Energy is developing the national energy efficiency policies that will be probably adopted by end of this year. And this is linked with the grant and the loan from ADB, which will also push investments to get those energy efficiency opportunities that are also of business opportunities and profitable opportunities towards the private sector. At the moment, another ministry, the Ministry of Land Management, Urban Planning and Construction, is also developing an NDC roadmap for building and construction 2020 to 2050. This is a kind of roadmap that lays out actions towards a low carbon emission or low emission the building sector and aims also to decarbonize or achieve net zero building sector by 2050. And finally, the process of developing a long-term low-emission development plan has also started. And the Prime Minister mentioned last year that this will be submitted before the climate summit this year. So this will be also a quite important step towards giving some indications what actions are needed to achieve this low-emission development scenario. Next slide. So concluding this, green solutions will play an increasing role for infrastructure investments. And this will impact, of course, all sectors. But in particularly, I see, and we see here quite good opportunities in real estate and building sector, in the energy sector, also waste management and urban infrastructure. Thanks for your attention, and please drop your question in the chat box if you have any. I'm happy to answer them. Over to you, Petra.
Okay, thank you, Susanne. Thank you. So next, we have Ms. Margaux BARDET from the Sevea. She will be sharing her view from the agribusiness industry. So welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be invited as a speaker today. And I'm glad to make a brief presentation of the agribusiness sector. So, as you may know, agriculture has always been and continues to be a strong sector in Cambodia, accounting for about 23% of GDP and with more than 3 million of people employed. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the importance of the sector for the resilience of Cambodian economy. There have been positive effects of the crisis on agriculture, such as the increase in the share of domestic production for domestic consumption. There have been migration flows with people coming back to rural areas, and this means an increase in households that rely on agriculture. And also investments were made in the production, even without expertise, with the idea to secure additional source of revenues. So there are positive growth and export figures in many sectors. For instance, in rice exports have each records level and increased by 42% during the first half of 2020, comparing to the same period the year before. But also exports of cassava, cashew, and mango to Vietnam increased by nearly 150% in the first 3 months of this year. So several challenges still need to be addressed for the productivity to improve and for the sector to live up to its full potential. So this includes, among other, the low level of technology used today, the poor farming skills, insufficient use of modern seed varieties and fertilizers, a lack of adapted infrastructure, limited access to rural credit, inadequate post-harvest processing, and also vulnerability to climate change. So because of its significant importance and the existing margin of progression, the sector presents many opportunities. So I will highlight a few of them. In the aquaculture sector, so because of the fishery reduction, the sector is seeing a rapid growth with more than an increase of 20% per year, but still facing challenges such as limited yield, insufficient knowledge level, poor quality of inputs, including the difficulty to access high quality feed, an underdeveloped cold chain, and also Cambodian fish farmers are competing with significant volumes of cheap imported fish. So the margin for progression is huge. Similarly, the horticultural sector presents many opportunities with significant interest from the government to reduce Cambodia's dependency on import from Vietnam. There's also an interesting market that exists around organic and premium quality spices and aromatic products, which is being developed for culinary purpose, but also for cosmetics. And also other important sectors, such as cassava or cashew that are expanding rapidly and that benefit from the development of the production, but also of the processing capacity. And there are new market opportunities with the free trade agreements established recently, and of course an increase of the mango export to China. So there is a huge potential for investment. Improving competitiveness and generating added value are major objectives foreseen to be achieved through improvements of value chain organization and investments in quality over the quantity, investment in processing and diversification of the production. But it seems important to mention that vertical integration is highly needed in this sector, with further investment in farmer support, knowledge transfer. And there are challenges, other broad challenges to consider before investing, such as the difficulty that exists to access accurate data, and other problems such as I said earlier, the lack of infrastructure, but also the electricity, or more generally energy costs, and lack of services associated. So, for example, sample testing for export, transport services, traceability services, and so on. Thank you very much for your attention, and over to you, Ratana.
Thank you, Margaux. So next we have from the last but not least industry, from the tourism and hospitality sectors. So our chairman, Mr. Tassilo Brinzer, he will share his presentation and give his view on these sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratanak. Do you all have my screen, yeah?
Yes, I think you can put it on full screen. Yeah.
Let me see. Here we go. All right. So, well, as you all imagine, and as you know, and I know I was confirmed, the tourism sector is obviously very, very important in Cambodia, but is also very heavily impacted in the last year. In 2019, the industry has brought in roughly $5 billion to the national economy. This has been reduced to roughly $1 billion in 2020, and I believe that until today, this has not much changed, this trend. If you compare that in 2019 for 21, you know, the industry was probably expected to bring in $6 billion. We were roughly $5 billion short this year. This is an enormous impact. In particular, as the tourism industry in Cambodia has a very broad revenue and spending structure. It benefits, first of all, a large informal economy, such as drivers, services, indirectly food stalls, and then obviously also goes up into the formal sector, the hotels, F&B business, airlines, airports, in particular, transport and logistic companies. So this has been impacted heavily. It, in particular, also supports many people on the ground, families, small earners. Their spending power usually moves from that income, from that informal income, back from the bottom up via consumption and spending for construction, housing, education for their children, etc., back into the formal economy. So a large share of what we see in Cambodia, a large share of the loss of GDP, the loss of business, etc., is indirectly also impacted by the tourism industry. Loans that are not repaid, as Guillaume from BRED Bank told us earlier, the numbers are going up. All of this has indirectly a lot to do with the tourism industry. Now, obviously, also this industry has a huge potential to grow back very fast. It remains a key sector of the economy in the future, very clearly. Skill levels at the moment are very high and very widely available due to the impact of the crisis. And as sad as I am to say, but there's also an opportunity now to invest in the bounce back of the industry. There's many hotels, resorts had to close, other assets have been distressed. And for the brave, I think there's a good opportunity now to come in, refurbish, rebuild the business and the industry, because it will rebound, and it will rebound strongly from its current status. So for my personal business in hospitality, I do at the moment right now expand, and get ready for the next recovery. Cambodia has attractive urban cultural scenes. Phnom Penh is very vibrant. Siem Reap is currently being remodeled and upgraded in terms of infrastructure. The country has extremely high, very high quality culinary standards. So it has a lot to offer to visitors. At the same time, right now, as I mentioned, it's a good opportunity to upgrade services and offerings, to include more local products in the supply chain. I think it's also important now to open local hospitality industries in urban centers here, to slowly, step by step, revive the industry. In terms of tourism marketing and promotion, I think also that the Ministry of Tourism, EuroCham, and all stakeholders maybe have to adjust and update a little bit in terms of how we are communicating Cambodia, focus more on the natural experiences, the culinary entertainment value, to be just the culture, and also reflect the modernity of the country a bit more. Let's look at, for example, Dubai, which is inviting many of the more modern, more contemporary traveler influencers, digital nomads, who are multipliers and who promote the country to a new target group. Post-pandemic, I think that it's important to also promote more individual tourism. This creates higher revenue per visitor. I think we have to move away from mass tourism, grow cultural tourism, and spread the revenue throughout the country. These also leave smaller ecological footprints overall. It has less impact on fewer major cultural and historical sites, but spreads the visitor and the revenue more to the provinces, and again back to the smaller areas. Mass tourism has a heavy impact on the local environment, as we know, and the largest share of revenues, again, is not available to or in Cambodia. Yeah? So tour organizers benefit abroad, international providers benefit, local SMEs and services have a smaller share of the revenue, and the top to bottom spending power, as opposed to the bottom to top spending power, again, little trickles down to the informal sector, and through that back into the formal sector. I think investment overall in sustainability-focused niche offerings for tourism is a huge opportunity here. Cambodia is part of the Greater Mekong sub-region. Usually a visit to this area includes Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. And Cambodia is generally a fixed part of this tour. We need to get people to stay a bit longer in Cambodia. Spend maybe instead of 5 days on average, 6-7 days. That would have a huge impact already. Investments in private tours, guided tours for higher spenders, for more conscious travelers will be a trend for sure. Adventure tourism, cycling, motorbike tours, sailing, surfing, trekking, river expeditions, etc., as well as high-end accommodation and premium local food experiences. We'll see huge opportunities. So do ecotourism and resorts. Again, there's opportunities right now. So we do encourage you to look into Cambodia. And last but not least, urban experiences. Phnom Penh has a vibrant, young, creative capital to attract a lifestyle-focused tourism and traveler scene is a great opportunity as well. Yeah. So just a brief overview on the tourism industry from my side. Thank you, and we'll see you and hear you very soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Tassilo, for your presentation. So I'll try to move quickly as we are running a bit late. So next, after the challenges, we talk about the opportunities and the prospects. So I would like to thank His Excellency and Christian for staying with us in the beginning. And I'll now pass the floor to Tom for his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ratanak. And yes, I'll try and keep this section brief. So, can everybody see my screen? Okay. Of course, I hope everybody's really appreciated the fact that they've heard from so many different sectors of the challenges they're facing, but also the huge opportunities that are still present in Cambodia. And perhaps we're just poised for this recovery once COVID-19 starts to alleviate a bit. And so to transition to the next stage, looking forward to a post-COVID recovery, we wanted to launch the second of our two publications this session. And that's our Business Opportunities in Cambodia Guide from 2021 to 2022. So what I'll do in this presentation is just show you very quickly what the guide contains. I'm sure it'll be posted in the Zoom chat for you to read in more detail, but hopefully I can just give some highlights of what it contains and why you might want to download and read it. So the first section, of course, is an introduction to Cambodia. We want people to be excited about the country. We want people to understand the opportunities it holds and its import-export profile. You can find key statistics, for example, GDP growth rate. Cambodia was the highest in ASEAN last year. Numerous GDP forecasts from World Bank, IMF, ADB, how they differ. We'll be updating this all the time, of course, as well. Where are Cambodia's exports? What are Cambodia's exports? What are their imports? Just as one quick example, I mean, you see 49% of Cambodia's imports in 2019 fall into the other category. It may be quite interesting for some people to know that there was billions of dollars of gold that are included in that figure. In terms of exports by country and imports by country, the US is the largest export destination as a single nation, but the European Union as a bloc remains the largest export destination overall. China is, of course, the area of greatest imports. In terms of foreign direct investment, again, it was growing until 2019. We really look forward to seeing the 2020 figures. One interesting statistic here is that the United Kingdom makes up a surprisingly large portion of foreign direct investment, around 25%. Although if you dive into this in more detail, that's a lot of it. In fact, most of it comes from UK overseas territories. So again, this is interesting information to some. This guide also includes information related to COVID-19, how Cambodia has handled it so far, the measures that it put in place in terms of tax, in terms of visa requirements. We include a detailed section on the reasons to invest in Cambodia and the challenges that an investor may face. You can see just a few of them here. For example, a business-friendly environment, investment incentives, quality of life, which I think many people on this call are enjoying, but also some of the very real challenges: high energy costs, a skills gap, lengthy procedures, and infrastructure challenges, but that are improving. We detail the major industries and opportunities. You would have heard some of these in the previous presentations. But for example, we cover the construction sector, garment sector, ICT and telecoms, tourism, which we really expect to rebound, as Tassilo just mentioned, in the near future, agriculture, healthcare, renewables. All of these are detailed in the guide. And these also include key industry statistics. So again, it's just one interesting statistic you might, not everybody on the call might be aware of. In 2020, rice exports actually grew. The agricultural sector had, in many ways, quite a good year, which was interesting. But for all of the sectors I just mentioned, we include these key figures. We detail infrastructure. So you can see the energy infrastructure of Cambodia. How much energy in Cambodia is being imported? How has this changed over time? What are Cambodia's airport expansion plans? What are Cambodia's railway expansion plans? As you can see on the right. We really hope this is almost a Bible for people to understand, get a very good high-level overview of Cambodia and what it's like to invest in. And so I have 30 seconds left. The final section is practical information. Thank you to Noe, our advocacy manager, for giving a lot of input into this particular section. In this section, you can find the latest visa information. What do you need if you're coming into Cambodia? What are your tax requirements going to be? What are the HR requirements? How much annual leave, etc. If you're registering a business, how should you do it? What's the best entity to follow? And to wrap up on 5 minutes, you can download it here and it will be posted in the Zoom chat. So I really hope that this is a document that can be useful to you. I hope this brief presentation has shown you what it can contain, what it contains. We will be updating this regularly. So anybody, if you have the latest data, please send it to us as well, and we'll continually update the digital version of this guide. It will also be available in physical copy for anybody who attended this presentation. So feel free to come to the EuroCham office and you can pick up a physical copy, not yet, but late next week. So thank you very much. And I'll now pass on to the next presenter, who is, I'll pass back to Ratanak. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. So yes, so I'm pleased and honored to welcome His Excellency Chea Vuthy. Of course, he is on behalf of His Excellency Suchanda joining us today, and His Excellency is the Deputy Secretary General of Cambodian Investment Board and of the CDC, and also the Cambodian Special Economic Zone. So His Excellency, thank you for spending your time with us since this morning. So I will pass the floor and mic to you to share your view on the future FDI promotion initiative in Cambodia. Thank you.
Mr. Denis SAINTE-MARIE, Executive Director of EuroCham, Mr. Tassilo, Brinzer, Chairman of EuroCham Cambodia. Very good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to attend this webinar today on topic looking forward to a post-COVID recovery, business sentiment and opportunities, and providing me the opportunity to speak on the future FDI promotion initiatives. It is not the easy topic because we do not know exactly what happened in the futures. Nobody knows that when the COVID-19 will be subsided. But anyway, I try my best to discuss with you. We have to discuss how we can work together to attract the investment in the context of COVID-19 and beyond. First and Foremost, I would like to offer my sincerest gratitude to EuroCham Cambodia for organizing this virtual webinar on this important topic for all relevant stakeholders to present and discuss their business opportunity, highlighted trends in its sectors, as well as the challenges impacted by COVID-19. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, 2020 and 2021 have been exceptionally challenging years as the world is severely hit by the economic repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the projected rebound of the economy in 2021 and the tireless effort of the government intervention, the unprecedented infection of the COVID-19 virus remains a prominent threat to the world economy. The travel restriction and the sharp decline of global demand led to swift reduction in economic and commercial activities, disrupting production, trade, supply chain, and connectivity. These economic repercussions are reflected in the UNCTAD estimation, which stated that 2020, the global FDI declined by 42%, and FDI inflow into ASEAN declined by 32%. In the world, 42%, and in ASEAN, 32%. In parallel, the world is still facing high uncertainty due to the risk of new wave of COVID-19 infection and the largest variants of coronavirus that are more lethal and acute. It could continue to disrupt the dynamic of the global economy. In addition, vaccination that could ensure herd immunity will take more time due to the gap in vaccine accessibility between developing and developed countries. This will lead to uneven economic recoveries, as only a few countries could revive their economies. In contrast, many others continue experiencing the impacts of both health and economic challenges. In the case of Cambodia, based on the latest report from the National Committee to Combat COVID-19, 21.68% of the targeted 10 million population have been vaccinated. And Cambodia's economy show a contraction of 3.1%. And FDI inflow have been affected and decreased by around 12% and continue to perform relatively well, considering the UNCTAD estimation. In the first 4 months of 2021, the number of QIP continued to decline. However, total committed investment capital slightly increased compared to 2020, primarily due to the big power plant in Seruville with 700 megawatt. Despite the increase in QIP, the new investment project show that Cambodia investment climate remain attractive despite challenging times. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Government of Cambodia top priority is to foster the economic recovery and rebuild a stronger economy through various in-depth reforms aimed at building a more resilient economic and social system against future crises. In this regard, the royal government has been preparing and planning to launch the post-COVID-19 recovery plan 2021 and 2023, aiming to revive economic growth back to the growth potential with sustainability and inclusiveness through ensuring peace, security, social stability, and public orders on the path of the new normal, as well as enhance competitiveness and promote economic diversification, especially building a strong industrial foundation with high export capacity and stronger linkage to the regional and global supply chains. Based on this, Cambodia would attach high priority to first, revival through building a strong foundation for economy return to growth by focusing on ensuring safety, managing the impacts, stabilizing and promoting the revival of potential businesses, particularly the hard-hit sectors, steadily creating jobs. Second, reform through continuing the implementation of key structural reform measures, including improving the trade facilitation, investment, and business climate, promoting and developing digitalization and economic system for both public and private sectors, and building resilience through strengthening preparedness and responsiveness to similar disease or situation that may erupt in the future by focusing on developing a stronger and more effective public health, social protection system, and ensuring sustainable and inclusive social economic recovery as well as development. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the world as we know it has changed irrevocably, and we are not returned to the old normal. If we stay still and wait for COVID to blow over, we will be worse than when the crisis began. At CDC, we are firmly aware of the precarious situation that the pandemics have brought upon us and its implication to our job as an investment promotion agency. With the unpredictable surge in cases and new travel restriction, there will be, of course, fewer physical investment promotion, seminar, and visiting delegation. Recognizing the global trend and understanding the potential of technology in promoting economic growth, the Council for the Development of Cambodia embraces innovation and accelerate technology adoption. The CDC is adopting a new normal and realigning our focus toward implementing a functional and comprehensive digital platform and providing e-services to facilitate investors' experience and build a good public perception. Even before the outbreak of the COVID-19, we have been stepping up efforts to build and modernize our digital infrastructures. In the area of investment facilitation, we joined the Cambodia platform in providing online registration for QIPs, as well as the national single window in providing online application for duty import of the master list. In addition to foster our digital marketing tool, we are also accelerating our digital marketing and merchandising effort in collaboration with the accelerated COVID economic support project supported by the UK government. We are now in the process of revamping our website, making it more attractive, accessible, and user-friendly. To push further the transition and diversification of the Cambodia economy, we are also working on the targeted investment program. In this area, we have been working with Kawak, Cambodia, Australia Agriculture Value Chain Program to establish a dedicated information unit known as Cambodia Agri-Food Investment Unit, which will act as a one-stop consulting center for investors who are seeking potential investment opportunity in agriculture and agro-processing industry in Cambodia. Besides this, we have also been working with Access Project to identify priority opportunity segments which Cambodia should capture. As a result, we have identified 2 targeted industries, automotive and consumer electronics, which we will be focusing on. These are the 2 industries with high potential for Cambodia to leverage on given existing strength and prospect for connecting with the regional value chain. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the area of investment matching and linkage, we have successfully worked with the World Economic Forum to launch the supply chain database, which allows FDIs to find suitable local suppliers. This new database does not only facilitate foreign firms to link with local suppliers in a responsible and sustainable manner, but also allow Cambodia to boost its reputation as a dynamic and competitive investment destination, especially among FDIs looking to invest in the region. Agriculture and industry remain the sector with the most potential for investment due to Cambodia's riches in natural resources, labor force, and open market. Taking up this opportunity, I would like to explore investors, especially European investors, to explore the business opportunity in Cambodia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, if COVID-19 could be controlled in 2022 with the increase of vaccination and herd immunity, Cambodia is expected to receive more investment. Amid this disruption, companies are reviewing their production and supply chain strategy, while some companies are considering to offshore option. Some will remain in Asia due to cost efficiency and market factors. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, some manufacturers were already thinking of China plus one or Thailand plus one strategy due to the trade tension and efficiency reason. Last but not least, I wish to share with all of you, that the best way to attract the investment in the context of COVID-19 and beyond is first to take care and nurturing of our existing investors. Second, to strengthen our ownership by gradually reducing dependence on the supply of goods and raw materials from outside. We should mobilize our local resources through encouragement of our local enterprises, especially who aggressively in the real estate business, to be actively participating in the production sectors such as import substitution, agriculture and agro-processing, and food processing industries. Based on this, we, private sector, development partners, and public sectors should work together to improve enabling conducive business environment through creating fast-tracking approval process for business and investment, a reduction in all kinds of application fees, providing stable, reliable, and reasonable price of electricity, a reduction or elimination of unnecessary red tape, bureaucracy overlap, or out-of-date procedures which can become costly impediments for trade and investment. Creating a more transparent, efficient, and predictable environment for facilitating cross-border trade and investment and improving logistic service. I look at the survey of EuroCham. There is some complaint that our measures and policy that have adopted by the government not successfully implemented or not meet the demand of the private sector. But we should continue to work together to speak with all the stakeholders in order to improve our business environment and make Cambodia become more attractive destination for FDI. To end my speech, I would like to take this opportunity to thank again the EuroCham for organizing this kind of important webinar on this topic. And I wish distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good health and all the best with your endeavors. Thank you very much. I think that I take more of your time. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Excellency. No, I think it is within the time frame. Thank you once again for your time and your remarks on the activities that the CC is currently doing to promote FDI promotion in Cambodia. So next, I would like to have Ms. Christine.
Sorry. I want to clear all my CV because I don't know who said it to you. I joined the Ministry of Planning in 1992. And in August 1994, I joined with TDC. Just only like that. Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Your Excellency. All right, we will correct it for the next sessions. Thank you. So yes, so may I please have Ms. Christine Bauer. She will talk on the future opportunities and regional integration and trade promotions from the development partners of Rise Plus Cambodia. So Christine, thank you for your time, and this is your floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anak. And thank you, Excellency Vuthy, for the excellent presentation and the very good news about Cambodia's investment situation. I worked some time ago on the investment law, and I'm very excited that it's coming to fruition now. And also thank you for EuroCham for inviting me to this interesting presentation, and also to the fellow panelists, and especially to you that are still here. I know we're a little bit over time, so I'll try to be quick moving through the question about Cambodia's position in the region and what are the opportunities in particular for international trade. So I'm the manager of Arise Plus Cambodia, which is working on trade policy, trade facilitation, and also support to SMEs. We're funded by the European Union and also by the German government. And we're about halfway through our project so far, and working primarily with Ministry of Commerce and also Customs, Ministry of Economy and Finance, and very interested.
Sorry, Christian. We have a comment. Can you speak a little bit louder, because we can hear you just a little bit low on the volumes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So those were just introductory remarks anyway. So the presentation outline, thank you for sharing it, is basically, I was going to talk about COVID's impact on the region, but I think that's already covered, so we can move quickly. A few thoughts on the ASEAN Economic Community, some good news for regional integration over the last couple of years, a picture of the overlapping regional trade agreements that Cambodia is part of, a few thoughts on RCEP, which I know is of interest to many of you. That's the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and some recent developments in Cambodia of interest. And finally, looking ahead. So what's on the agenda in the trade space in Cambodia in the next couple of years, and then a bit of a crystal ball, where do I think the opportunities might be at a very high level in trade, looking in the medium term. So if you would skip to the next slide. So these are just some graphics. I think this has been covered, but just to show, obviously ASEAN has been affected by COVID, but you can see that ADB's forecast for Southeast Asia for the next couple of years is a pretty rapid bounce back, which is good news. Next slide. So the ASEAN Economic Community has been a really big success when you think about tariffs and really creating virtually a tariff-free environment for trade within ASEAN's 10 member states, including Cambodia. But it's a mixed picture in that the practical realities are often difficult. There's quite a lot of what we call non-tariff measures in the region, which are things like licensing requirements, packaging requirements, testing requirements, restricted items, all sorts of things. The number of these is large and growing, and there's not very much regulatory coherence between the countries. So you might be facing many different regulations if you're trying to export a product to different countries. And it can be difficult to determine what are the right regulations and what are the procedures. There is a lack of enforcement capability at the ASEAN level to deal with this issue. While the documents say the right thing, it's actually in practice been very, very difficult to deal with this issue. And in particular, eliminating non-tariff barriers, which is basically a non-tariff measure that's illegal. So non-tariff measures can be very important for valid regulatory purposes, or they can be trade restricting without that, in which case we call them non-tariff barriers. And finally, if you look at the World Bank Logistics Performance Index, you don't really see a very solid improvement, I would say, across ASEAN. There's some pockets, but it's been very uneven. So that's a bit of a challenge in terms of achieving the dream of ASEAN economic integration. So if we go to the next slide, please. So you can see here are some kind of some good news for what's happened of late, looking at the ASEAN level. So the ASEAN single window is a reality, and it connects the national single windows of a number of different countries, including Cambodia. So you're able to apply for the ATIGA Form D, which is the e-certificate of origin online, which is wonderful. So that's one certificate of origin, which should cover all 10 countries. And there's a move towards self-certification of origin, which is in practice not fully implemented yet, but technically it is, and that's good news. Looking ahead, as we speak, Japan is interested in revising its product-specific rules of origin, which is potentially very important because Japan is one of many countries offering duty-free, quota-free access to least developing countries, including Cambodia. However, those products still need to comply with rules of origin. And so the devil can be in the details, but UNCTAD is supporting Cambodia and other LDCs at the WTO level to advocate for kind of more appropriate product-specific rules of origin, particularly for the least developed countries. So that could be a good opportunity for Cambodia. Also, the ASEAN, Australia, and New Zealand Free Trade Agreement is scheduled for an upgrade. So that should be further liberalization of trade, particularly in services. I think we'll see some good improvements there. As you probably know, I mean, there's a huge amount of energy on e-commerce and digital trade in the region, particularly Singapore has been introducing some digital economic agreements that are very ambitious and that they're kind of aiming for international standards, interoperability, all sorts of good things. And so they've been establishing themselves as a leader, but really almost all the ASEAN member states are also busy with domestic regulation, such as Cambodia, of course, to set the rules for digital trade, for e-commerce, and to make things more clear. And then we also have the ASEAN Trade and Services Agreement, which has been signed. So it should be coming into force soon, hopefully this year, next year. And the key aspect of that one is that it marks kind of a shift from a positive scheduling approach to a negative scheduling approach, which gets pretty technical. So I won't get into all the details, but basically the negative approach is much better for businesses generally, because a negative list indicates that unless in the agreement it specifically says this services sector is closed, then by default that sector is open. So what that means is it's easier for businesses to understand, and it's also means that as new services are created, they're automatically open, rather than a positive list approach, which is where the openings are scheduled. So it's a gradual shift, but it's good news to be moving to a negative list approach for services schedule. If you would move to the next slide. So here's just a picture of the overlapping regional agreements. So you can see ASEAN in red. RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership countries, are in blue. So that's ASEAN plus 5 countries. And then there's the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Cambodia is not a member of, but it's relevant as it does include many of the ASEAN countries. The key thing, and the reason I wanted to show you this, is that if you think about trading goods, RCEP isn't immediately super interesting for Cambodia, because as a least developed country, Cambodia already receives highly preferential market access to all of those countries in green. It does mean that there are other benefits, not just about tariff rates, but until Cambodia graduates from LDC status, it doesn't change the picture so much, but there are some other benefits, which I'll talk about. So if you want to flip to the next slide, please. So RCEP has been negotiated over many years, and expectations were frankly a little bit low, but it's been a deeper agreement than people really thought at first. So there's a lot of great text and chapters on trade facilitation, on transparency, economic cooperation, standardization of rules, especially in e-commerce, and intellectual property rights in particular is much more kind of ambitious than people had expected. And a key thing that relates to this question about compliance and rules of origin and certificates of origin is that within RCEP, there's one set of rules of origin, meaning, is this a Cambodian product or not? Does it apply or not? You know, what percentage of the inputs came from Cambodia or are eligible, so that then that product can receive the special treatment that Cambodia gets as a member of RCEP. So they have the exact same rules of origin for all 15 countries. And that also means that you would only need one certificate of origin to be able to export to any of the other 14 member states, rather than having a bunch of different ones, which is basically the situation now. If you look at the ASEAN plus 1 agreements, so ASEAN China would have different rules of origin than ASEAN Japan, than ASEAN Australia, and that gets really complicated really quickly. So that's the good news. The tariff schedule is not quite as good because those were negotiated bilaterally. So it's pretty complicated in terms of what are the rules that you would be facing, and you may even require kind of some special advice to dig through and understand that. As I said, the digital trade chapter is really very extensive, very progressive, and the services schedules in RCEP are actually again moving towards negative list. So about half the countries, including Cambodia, have adopted a positive list, and then the more advanced economies have generally gone for a negative list, which is again a good sign. Going to the next slide. So I think I'll just kind of skip through this. You know, there's an e-commerce law, a national single window. His Excellency Chea Vuthy was just talking about how CDC offers the master list and other key documents are available there. You all know about the China Free Trade Agreement, the Korea Free Trade Agreement. The details are not public yet, but of course it's good news for Cambodian businesses, and I've just listed out a couple of key points here. If we go to the next slide, might be more interesting for you. So what's coming up next is the National Committee on Trade Facilitation, which is a WTO obligation, will be launched very soon. We're working with the Secretariat at GDCE on this, and it's a great team. They have all the members set up. It's basically just waiting on COVID to allow us to meet in person, and then you'll see the launch of the National Committee on Trade Facilitation. They've developed a roadmap, which is going into some specific areas for not just customs, but also interagency, what can be done to improve the trade facilitation environment here. The investment law will be coming, of course. We see lots of progress in customs digitization and new projects that are underway. Our project, Arise Plus, is funding an Asakuda upgrade and working on risk management and also pre-arrival processing, particularly in the maritime industry, which means that goods would be able to clear customs much more quickly because customs would already know kind of when they get on the boat in Europe or wherever that they're coming. Then we have more work coming on the National Single Window, also working on upgrading the best trader incentive mechanism, particularly to make it more SME friendly, so to make it a little bit easier, and also to improve the range of benefits that are offered to best traders. And as I'm sure you've read in the papers, there are bilateral free trade negotiations starting now with India. And I think the next countries are likely to be, as we've read as well, Mongolia, Japan, Russia, Eurasian Economic Union, and possibly others. So I think those will continue to kind of build in more benefits to Cambodian exporters on top of what we see in RCEP and these other agreements. So skipping to the last slide then, please. So just to say, you know, I think the picture is pretty good in terms of opportunities. I think we're going to see continued work on trade facilitation by the government here, who is really taking this very seriously. I think the market openings are going to be most interesting in Korea, in India, in Japan, in Russia for Cambodian exporters. Haven't talked about this, but the COVID silver lining is that a lot of international trade fairs have now moved online, which really lowers the cost of participating. It requires a different mindset maybe, but it does make it a little bit easier to identify business partners overseas. And so I think that's going to be a real advantage to our Cambodian firms looking to make new connections. E-commerce, of course, is just going to be a huge area of growth in Asia. And services liberalization, I think, is where we're going to, not tomorrow, but kind of over time, see quite a lot of opportunities for overseas work by our Cambodian firms. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. And thank you again to EuroCham and to all of you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you for your presentation, and once again, thank you for spending your time. I know you have a multiple meeting this morning, and you try to be online as much as possible, and thank you for that. So for our last key agenda, I would like to first to thank you, His Excellency Chea Vuthy, our guest speakers, and our participants for staying in the webinar since this morning. And for our last and closing remarks, I would like to welcome Mr. Tassilo Brinzer, our chairman, to share on EuroCham's achievement in the past 10 years and for our future engagement. To note that this year in particular marks the 10 year of EuroCham in engagement in business since 2011. So thank you, and Tassilo, I pass the floor to you.
Yes, thank you, Ratanak and team, and also Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. We very much appreciate your participation and ongoing support for EuroCham and your partnership. Yeah, not so much talking about the past achievements, Ratanak and everyone. We're talking mostly also a little bit about what's happening at EuroCham right now in Cambodia, and also what is our future vision for the chamber. As you said, EuroCham, this 1st of June is exactly 10 years old. And we will hopefully be able to hold a nice celebration event and networking events surrounding and celebrating this event very soon, but not on 1st of June, unfortunately, due to the current circumstances. Unfortunately, the anniversary of EuroCham also comes at the most unfortunate time in the last 10 years, both for the chamber and for Cambodia. You know, as we are an organization that is deeply embedded in the Cambodian society and economy, we suffer just as much as the country with everyone. Our members are majority Cambodian investments by Europeans, Cambodian investors with European business ties or international groups with a long investment history in Cambodia. And we all are in the same boat here right now. On top of this, of course, we also had to restructure the chamber a little bit in the last 6 months, quite a bit, I have to say. We lost heavily some revenue due to the COVID situation, so we had to cut our cost quite significantly by up to 30% in the last 6 months. We have redistributed responsibilities within the team. We're trying to be more efficient and have to master also the challenges of losing some of the core funding we had received in the past years. So all together with the COVID situation, with the restructuring, with the economic crisis that is kind of resulting for many of our members out of this, we also lost many members. We have many challenges that we went through. We also obviously have mastered the EBA discussion in the year 2020 together with the royal government and the other stakeholders quite well. I have to say this discussion to us, as we constantly also mentioned with the government, is over. We still have 80% of trade preferences to Europe. And in 2020 and 2021, we would have exported just as much as we did prior to the reduction of the 20% had COVID not struck so heavily. The EBA remains here. Europe remains a key partner for Cambodia. Higher value products are ongoingly and constantly and still very, very welcome to be exported to Europe. So the EBA is not gone. Only 20% of it is gone, and those 20% mostly regarded lower value products. So COVID-19 and the Royal Cambodian government's challenge to address it is our challenge as well. EuroCham is working closely with the Royal Cambodian government in addressing responses and post-COVID-19 strategies. The COVID-19 pandemic, obviously, as we have heard today, has thrown many of our sectors and our businesses into turmoil this year. How do we want to move forward as EuroCham? As we have also heard a bit today already, we continue to promote Cambodia as a +1 market to European and other businesses in the region. We expand our partnership and our network with the European ASEAN Business Council in Singapore, which represents 9 European chambers in ASEAN. And we support, of course, the promotion of Cambodia's geographical location at the heart of the Greater Mekong sub-region, but also of Southeast Asia, and its location between the strong economies of Thailand and Vietnam. This is a key position that we believe we can benefit from in the future through better connectivity, through promotions, through partnerships, through events that we create. And we very much hope that these two strong economies, right and left, will also help us and pull us up here after the COVID situation is amended a little bit. We hope to increase investment from these markets as well. We're looking to promote Cambodia as a destination in Malaysia, in Singapore, Vietnam, and Thailand, and hope that we can attract many more companies who also would like to reach through the EBA and through preferential market access products to reach China and the EU. So we do believe that Cambodia has a very, very good and strong opportunity and growth prospect in the future, and remain very confident that we can contribute to exploring that potential in the next years. One of our key focuses at the Chamber since last September, I would say, has been to also focus more on renewable energy as a whole. We know that this is a difficult discussion partially, but we encourage the country to move away from fossil fuels, while we also obviously acknowledge that that Cambodia has to ensure sufficient energy supply for its growing demand. So this is a balancing game and a balancing act, of course, but a focus on renewable energy will make Cambodia more attractive to international investors, European, Western, but also and increasingly Chinese and investors from ASEAN. They all depend on global supply chains, and those supply chains require high sustainability standards. So there is no, we cannot say anymore that renewable energy is a European or Western topic. No, this will be more and more important in ASEAN, in China, and Cambodia cannot escape from that discussion. And we would like to support the country in addressing these challenges. Renewable energy is a driver of skill development, of growth, and of future-proof jobs. Of course, sustainability and high standards are also a differentiator for European businesses who generally have high international standards in trade and investment. As you all know, EuroCham has been founded by the German, French, British national associations and chambers, and is supported by Italians, Benelux, and the Nordic. And we look forward to hopefully in the next weeks and months to launch a Central European Business Association as a new chapter within EuroCham, which should also increase our reach in the Central European and closer to the Eastern European countries and markets. We are partnering very, very well and more with the European development sector, in particular currently programs with, for example, GIZ and its Business Scouts program. Here we launch, hopefully very soon, in the garment sector, a new sectorial committee that will address sustainability questions and support the ongoing development to higher quality production in the garment industry. We open an import-export promotion desk at EuroCham, where we focus quite a bit on agricultural products, where we try to do matchmaking and support the training of local companies in branding, in marketing, in addressing European regulations and answering to European and international regulations and certifications. We work, as we have just heard from Christine as well, closely with the Arise Plus program, which facilitates regional trade and cross-border logistics. As you know, or you might hopefully are aware, every day that we can speed up a delivery or transport from another neighboring country means pure money and economic growth. In this context, we also have a very, very good partnership with the Cambodia Chamber of Commerce, with which we cooperate in various areas, in particular in import and export promotion with Ognakit Mengenix and Director Nimo Meng and their team. So we also hope that we can continue to expand on this partnership with the Chamber. Now, we know challenges remain. Skilled workforce is still an ongoing topic, and we support via our partnerships with the chambers, with the development sector, with national chapters, training and skill upgrading initiatives throughout all areas, and will also continue to focus on this in order to be able to attract more higher value investment into the kingdom. Another challenge regularly mentioned to us as well is customs procedures, for example, customs clearances, and also facilitation of imports, small imports, individual imports, individual logistics. So I think there's quite a bit more that can be done, and we are addressing this as well, again, to be able to eliminate obstacles to more efficient trade and investment from higher quality business. Over-regulation and or unclear regulation often result in high cost for double language standards and business operations, for translations, for interpretation, as we have also seen now during the COVID crisis. It sometimes takes long to be clear about what is actually meant, etc. So EuroCham will also provide or try to provide more additional information services to international businesses in English in order to make sure that people know where they are going and what is the law and what is the regulatory environment. Compliance is an issue for some of us. European businesses are generally fairly compliant or try to be compliant. Tax and audit regimes are often mentioned by our members, as we heard today as well, as slightly problematic or not always equally applied. And we continuously also work with the Royal Cambodian government to address this issue and to move forward towards a more advanced, a more equal playing field that is also seamlessly integrating into the regional peers, which are moving quite fast in certain areas. The opportunities for 2022 and moving forward from this current situation, obviously, we support the reform of the economy in the post-COVID crisis. So yes, it is an opportunity to reform, to eliminate red tape, to streamline regulation, and to facilitate trade, to facilitate the speed of logistics, to further digitize the economy and to modernize the economy. So this is where EuroCham is very strongly engaged through our advocacy team, through our interactions with the Royal Cambodian government, and through the participation and strong engagement of our advocacy team around Noe, Zola, and Denis, and everybody else who's at EuroCham and supporting these efforts. Cambodia remains one of the most open and accessible economies in the region. We still have some very, very advantageous investment conditions here. 100% foreign ownership for a company, full profit repatriation. It's still largely a US dollar-based economy. So and fast growth and a young population also that is increasingly better educated, tech savvy, and aware of international trends contribute to the attractivity of this market. We have very well worked together with the CDC, with His Excellency Chea Vuthy and Sobchenda Sopia on the upcoming draft or the current draft of the investment law update, which we believe is very, very important also to speedily now bring onto the approval process and publish and communicate to the international business community in order to show that Cambodia is open now, is modernizing, is moving forward, has some more contemporary provisions in its laws and incentive structure for investors. So this is something where we also promote more open more open economy and to continue to promote this open economy. We had a good opportunity to work on this law, and we continue to support the government in promoting it and the country. In tourism, as I mentioned earlier, we would like to promote a higher value tourism, higher quality tourism in Cambodia, and the upcoming year 2022 will provide good opportunity for everyone in the sector, with Siem Reap becoming the ASEAN City of Culture. So this is a great opportunity, and the current infrastructure upgrades in Siem Reap are definitely contributing also to a positive outlook. Very lastly, I think the ASEAN Chairmanship of Cambodia in 2022 is a very, very good starting point to relaunch a more positive investment and trade and business climate in Cambodia. 2012 was the start of a very, very prosperous phase for the kingdom. That was the last time Cambodia had this chairmanship. EuroCham will work very closely with the government on and host the EU ASEAN Business Summit in March or April 2022, where we will invite regional European businesses to the kingdom, and we hope that this is also a starting point for another decade of growth in the kingdom, as well as in November, hopefully 2022, work with the Cambodia Chamber of Commerce to host the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. So not all is doomed. There's also some very positive outlooks for Cambodia in the next 12 months, I would say. We start our activities now in June in talking to the government and our counterparts to see how we can develop strategies and support their strategies to promote the kingdom and continue to facilitate business, trade, and investment in Cambodia. So lastly, thank you all very much for joining this event today. Thank you to the team, thank you to Ratanak and all participants and panelists for joining us and for sharing their insight information on Cambodia. And we look forward to hosting more of these events and to share more and ongoing information on where we're heading in the coming months and years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tassilo. And so once again, thank you to all participants, to His Excellency Vuthy, to our guest speakers, the entire team of EuroChams for your time and support this morning. So just lastly, I would like to thank again our platinum partners and gold partner for their support to EuroChams, of course, and for their trust. And would like to inform also that next week, EuroCham will host another webinar series on healthy buildings, on integrating the health and wellness into your building environments. So you will receive a communication around this afternoon. So once again, thank you everyone, and we look forward to welcome everyone once again in the next webinar series. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.